Good morning, you're watching Business World Live. I'm Danny Laurel.
And I'm Jess De Los Santos. Here are the biggest stories to kickstart this trading day Tuesday. Time and again, the BSP says the impact of the war in Eastern Europe on the Philippines is just minimal. The Bangko Sentral also says the exposure of domestic banks to Russia and Ukraine is only less than 1%.
The Finance Department pushes for reforms to real property taxes rather than taxing the super rich. The agency says wealth taxes are more easily evaded.
Moody's keeps its stable outlook for Philippine banks even as soured loans remain above pre-pandemic levels.
And Voyager Innovations raises more than $200 million in fresh funds. This pushes the fintech firm's valuation to about $1.4 billion. We begin our broadcast with the Bangko Sentral giving repeated assurances the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war on the Philippine economy will just be minimal.
Central Bank Governor Ben Jokno also says domestic banks won't likely be gravely affected by the war in Eastern Europe. Jokno says the cross-border financial exposure of Philippine banks to Russia and Ukraine amounts to less than 1% of the banking industry's total deposit liabilities. Remittance inflows from both countries in 2021 also stood below 1%. But Jokno acknowledges that the war could indirectly affect remittances from Russia and Ukraine.
In terms of trade, Jokno describes direct links with Russia and Ukraine as, quote, negligible. Exports to Russia amounted to $120 million. That's just 0.2% of the Philippines' total exports in 2021, while exports to the Ukraine were smaller at $5 million.
Now on to some weather updates. Tropical Depression Agaton has moved to the vicinity of Marabut in Samar. That's after being almost stationary at the Samar and Leyte area early this morning. The NDRRMC says the 20 deaths recorded are still up for validation. 6 individuals are confirmed injured, while 1 person is reportedly missing. As of 8 a.m., the number of barangays affected by Agaton has reached over 270 across 9 regions. Almost 96,000 families or 140,000 individuals were affected. At least 91 houses were damaged by Agaton. The tropical depression also affected more than 250 hectares of agricultural land with an estimated worth of more than 870,000 pesos. As of 8 a.m., Pag-asa places the southern portion of Masbate here in Luzon under Signal Number 1. Signal Number 1 is also up in the Dinagat Islands in Mindanao. Over in Visayas, the following areas remain under Signal Number 1. Eastern Samar, Northern Samar, Biliran, Leyte, Southern Leyte, and the northeastern portion of Cebu. Strong winds are expected to prevail in these areas in the next 36 hours.
Though the official death toll from the NDRRMC is still at 20, local authorities in Leyte are reporting more casualties caused by Tropical Depression Agaton.
Some families are feared to be trapped in a landslide affecting several villages in the island. Romel Lopez with the details.
Several bodies covered in tarpaulin. This was the aftermath of a landslide in Baybay City in Leyte. As early as Sunday night, water raged as the outpour one let up due to the tropical depression Agaton. The incessant rains resulted in a mudslide which wiped out parts of several barangays. According to Representative Carl Cari of Leyte, at least 25 died due to the landslide in Baybay.
Akala namin kahapon ng gabi, akala namin hihina na yung ulan, lumakas. Tapos kaninang umaga, yun na nga, may mga bundok na bumigay, may mga natabunan na barangay Kansungka, madaming missing kasi natabunan nga ng landslide, saka yung doon din sa barangay Bunga.
45 more are reported to be missing, while no less than 50 have been already rescued. A quarter of the province of Leyte are now submerged in floodwaters, including the towns of Mayorga, MacArthur, and Javier. In Mayorga, residents had to bring their pets and livestock as they evacuated. But some farm animals were left behind to die, resulting in losses for the owners. While feeling sorry, Ninita is still relieved that her family was rescued in the nick of time.
Sa bahay namin, marami hanggang tudo ang tubig sa loob ng bahay namin. Tumawid kami rito. Andun yung mga apo ko, itinawid namin. Buti na lang tong pinsang ko pumunta kanina dahil kung hindi kawawa kami. Hindi namin alam kung paano kami makakalabas doon.
Residents like Sosimo are lost for words as they had just lived through Typhoon Odette a few months ago.
Walang masyado hangin. Ulan talaga. Tuloy-tuloy ang ulan. Magdamag, umaga. Nagising na kayo ng umaga. Tubig na pala to. Kaya wala na kayo magawa.
In Javier, motorists are stranded at the National Highway due to severe flooding. Even rescue units were stuck. Rescuers have been trying to reach the towns of Abuyog and Baybay, which are the two most affected in Leyte.
We do not know actually yet kung anong situation doon. Unless nga we reach the town. Mahirapan ngayon, dahil kaya man ng sasakyan. We are waiting for the truck. We have the truck. Yun ang maghihilan nito, pati yung mga tao, para makatawid doon.
According to latest PDRRMO, nearly 300 individuals have been evacuated, while 16 out of 44 towns and cities are submerged in floodwaters. For News 5, Romel Lopez, we are One News.
The Finance Department is asking local governments to adjust their real estate taxation. Finance Chief Sonny Dominguez said that at present, local governments lose billions of pesos by using property values that are no longer at par with international standards. He said legislating property valuation reform would allow local governments to collect the right taxes. Dominguez also said such reforms are better than imposing a wealth tax, saying as taxes on other forms of wealth are more easily evaded. He said regularly updating the schedule of real property market values is the best way to target the super rich for taxation. Meanwhile, the BIR says private schools and nonprofit hospitals may have to pay the 25% regular corporate income tax. That's if their gross income from unrelated activities exceed 50% of their total income. This is in line with the IRR for a law amending the Revenue Code to clarify the income tax rate for private schools and nonprofit hospitals. Heads up, Meralco customers, you will be seeing another round of increase in electricity bills this month. Meralco says there will be a 50 centavo per kilowatt hour increase in power rates this April. That translates to an additional 107 pesos for a typical household consuming 200 kilowatt hours. For consumers using 300 kilowatt hours, you will see a monthly increase of over 160 pesos, 214 pesos for those consuming 400 kilowatt hours, and 268 pesos for those consuming 500 kilowatt hours. Meralco says the rate hikes come on the back of higher generation charge caused by higher charges from independent power producers and the electricity spot market. Consumption patterns are also expected to increase this summer season. But Meralco spokesperson Joe Zaldariaga says it's still too early to tell if there will be another round of increases in May.
There is still really pressure for rates to go up by May, but there are still other factors in place, so it's kind of too early to say. Hopefully, may ibang factors na pumasok para ma-overturn.
And the shipping industry is struggling to reach pre-pandemic cargo volumes this year due to the ongoing fuel crisis. The Philippine Liner Shipping Association said that the spike in fuel prices and the overhang of the Ukraine war is going to be a problem for recovery. The group added that some shipping companies in the country have started increasing freight fees by about 25% on average. Although Chelsea Logistics still believes that cargo volume should be better this year, but the company admitted that the challenge now is the cost to operate, which is not limited to just fuel.
Now, this from the Philippine Star. The Sugar Regulatory Administration says the country's sugar supply may no longer be enough by June. The SRA explained the planned production for sugar for the current crop year is expected to fall to below 2 million metric tons. That's why it's defending its plan to push through with importing 350,000 metric tons of sugar. The agency also warned that sugar prices have been soaring and the trend may go on for the coming weeks and months. On a per kilo basis, sugar prices have reached a high of 63 pesos from just 50 pesos a year ago.
The Trade Department says the full potential of MSME's exporters is still largely untapped. The agency is now urging MSME exporters to take advantage of the Philippines' preferential trade arrangements to cater to more markets and further contribute to job creation. DTI is also pushing the government to further empower MSMEs and to talk up the advantages of such preferential arrangements. Trade Assistant Secretary Alan Gepti says the RCEP was particularly crucial for MSMEs to tap because of its harmonized and improved trade facilitation mechanisms for member economies. RCEP includes Australia, China, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, and the 10 ASEAN members. The Philippines has yet to sign on to RCEP after the Senate was unable to give its concurrence before it took a break on February 3rd for the May elections.
Now, circling back to one of our top stories and to talk about all things tax, we have on the show tax whiz Mon Abrea, CEO and Senior Tax Advisor at the Asian Consulting Group. Mon, good morning. Thank you for spending time with us today.
Good morning.
All right. So first, again, we reported earlier there's a push here from the Finance Department asking local governments to adjust real property tax valuations here. Of course, all this comes from proposals of imposing a wealth tax on the super rich. Let's start with that. How much of a realistic endeavor is this for government?
Well, I think the proposal to impose wealth tax will be a bit challenging, especially that we have bank secrecy law. That's why I agree with the Department of Finance with making sure that the real property valuations are updated, because it's something that cannot be taken away or hidden.
Given that, how problematic are current real property valuations, and how is doing that a more viable option for government rather than taxing the rich on their other forms of wealth?
Would there also be some form of, cheating or miscalculations when we start doing, mark-to-market valuations, sir?
Well, I think the key there is transparency and technology. That it has to be updated and accessible by everyone. That's first, so that whoever is doing the assessment or computation will not have any discretion. And number two, making sure that the update is real time. If not annually, it's regularly, so that whether it's real property tax or capital gains or whatever tax will be assessed, will be based on reliable and the correct amounts.
But how behind are current valuations? Would you know of certain scenarios or specific areas wherein makikita talaga yung discrepancy in terms of rate na parang this is no longer appropriate?
Well, honestly, the market value is not really the market value, because like for instance, as mentioned in the statement of Finance Secretary, just in the exclusive subdivisions in Makati, it's practically like 10% of the actual market value. And yet that is the basis of the real property tax, simply because the schedules are not updated. So it's everyone in the real estate industry knows that if they look at if they refer on the schedule of market value, it's probably the lowest, if not lower than the actual market value.
Okay, so sir, is it just a matter of getting these zonal values that are already existing and updating them more frequently, or what is the problem here? Because we already have this system of zonal values and they are being updated naman, and there are areas to be looking out for here. What's your proposal here? What's the best way to do this? Especially since in one zone, iba-iba talaga yung market values. Ang hirap nila i-balloon together.
Agree. But we have to remember that the zonal value is determined by BIR, while the real property or the market value is determined by the city assessor or the city hall. So I guess one is to make sure that there is really a third-party expert or reference in order to make sure that the values are not way too far from the actual value, whether it's zonal or the market value. And number two, as I had mentioned earlier, the transparency, that the amounts are accessible, so that it will not depend on who's selling or who will be paying taxes.
Okay. Sir, I have one question po on the capital gains tax in real estate, which, I teach finance and accounting. And in other countries, you pay the tax on the gain mismo, diba? On when you sell, minus how much you bought it, that's the profit, and then you pay a tax on that. In the Philippines, it seems like you pay the tax on the full amount that you received.
Yeah.
What's the rationale for this, sir? And, is there an issue with this for you?
Well, honestly, that was the definition in the law, which is something that can be looked into. Because remember, the reason why capital gains is imposed is because you are not in the business of real estate. So it means if you're correct, by its term, it should be on the gain, not on the gross selling price or market value. But again, that is in the law, and unless it is revised, I guess we just have to comply with it.
Okay, this time around, let's shift the conversation. Of course, tax filing season na, and it comes it comes a week after the Holy Week. I mean, the deadline has been moved to April 18. Some of us, of course, are on vacation. Some practical concerns here. Some now may not be able to file their respective to pay their taxes in their respective RDOs. How can they go about this?
Well, number one, I would like to tell everyone to please use the online facilities of the Bureau of Internal Revenue. Whether it's electronic filing and payment system, EBIR forms, and the mobile payments channel, online payment facilities, please use it. Do not go anymore to the RDOs. But in case you need to go to the BIR office, the Commissioner has already released a regulation or a memorandum allowing out of region or jurisdiction filing and payment. It means you can actually file and pay wherever we are at before the deadline.
Okay, so clear suggestion there. Use the online platform. Sir, let's talk about this tax rate on non-profit schools and hospitals. They're looking to impose 25%. That's BIR Regulation number 3, 2022. Does that make sense? And please, can you explain, sir, hindi ba by the nature of schools of hospitals, dapat non-profit yan, which means they're not supposed to be taking out any of the income, and distributing this to their shareholders. It should be just used for the operations of the schools by definition. So why would there be an option to have even more taxes? Is that on the additional revenues generated that don't go back into these businesses? What about these listed firms, sir? We have listed, hospitals doing IPOs, schools doing IPOs.
Well, first, let us be clarified that in the existing law and even in the Republic Act 11635, which clarified the preferential treatment for proprietary educational institution, there's a provision there that states that there should be no income from non-related or unrelated activities more than 50%. It means whether it's a school or a hospital, if you started generating income from your hotel, cafeteria, or store, bookstore, whatever other activities other than its main purpose, why it was given the preferential rate. Remember, it's 1%, which will become 10% after the tax relief. But again, the regulations simply reminds or reiterates that in case you are already generating income more than 50% from other activities which are not directly related to your sole purpose, kasi dapat nga wala naman talagang ibang purpose, then the 25% will apply.
Sir, sorry, just to clarify, are shareholders of schools and hospitals able to get dividends on the profit if it is related to the education and the primary purpose?
Well, that is the purpose of Republic Act 11635. Remember, during upon passage of the CREATE law, there was a commotion among the private schools because there are indeed private schools which are stock corporation, which means that they really issue dividends. And prior to that, the interpretation of the BIR, which was through a regulation, is that those who are receiving dividends will pay 25% because you're not qualified to use the preferential rate. But because of they lobby to the Congress and this resulted to the passage of RA 11635, now even private schools, whether stock or non-stock or receiving dividends, they're qualified to use the preferential rate.
Okay. All right, sir. So very interesting points there. Thank you so much for that update. It is, of course, malapit na yung deadline ng filing tax season. Keep yourselves in check and keep yourselves updated on the existing rules.
Again, that was Mon Abrea, CEO and Senior Tax Advisor over at Asian Consulting Group. Now, coming right up after the break, the fintech behind PayMaya raises more than $200 million in new funds.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us. Wala naman ang wraps, but still. Wala na po, opo. Hala! Susan!
Asan po yung ano niya?
Sa Bagyan. Ay, shit.
And you're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel.
Okay, Dan, we've closed below 7,000 twice in 3 days now. Any hope the sideways trading is tilted towards the upside this Tuesday?
A lot of hope, Jess. We're still at those levels, 6966.59. That is down by 0.3%. Look at it naman. So as you mentioned, exactly that, sideways trading. I did want to take a quick peek at one very important stock to be watching out for here, which is 50 cents down 9.3% of a plunge this morning. That is PXP Energy. After they and together with their unit Forum Energy declared force majeure on 2 service contracts in the West Philippine Sea. They said they will be terminating all of the related supply and services agreement. They said that they received an order from the Department of Energy on April 6, suspending their exploration activities for SC-72 and 75. Now, another issue, this was actually after in November, the Philippines greenlit the oil drills in that disputed area of the West Philippine Sea. So unfortunately, hindi matutuloy ang drilling for PXP and Forum. Let's take a quick peek as well as the banks this morning, Jess. This as Moody's has kept a stable outlook for the Philippine banking system. They say that the operating environment is expected to benefit from the reopening of the economy, but that the SARD loans that remain above pre-pandemic levels will continue to pose some risks, Jess.
Okay, Dan, speaking of banks, you've got a story in a possible newcomer here. Now with heavy financial backing to make that a reality. Give us a lowdown.
Exactly. That is, of course, PayMaya or Voyager that owns PayMaya. That is the digital arm of PLDT. They have announced via a PSE filing that they have raised $210 million in a new investment round that was led by SIG Venture Capital. So the valuation is now $1.4 billion, or from unicorn, just unicorn plus status na siya, nag-evolve na siya. And other new investors are also including First Pacific and Singapore's EDBI. You also have existing shareholders PLDT, KKR, Tencent, and IFC participating in this funding round. And like you mentioned, they have said that they will be using this to launch Maya Bank. That will be offering other things that they're apart from just a payment or wallet. It's going to be offering cryptocurrencies, micro investments, and even insurance, Jess. However, parent PLDT is actually down this morning with the rest of the bourse by 0.9%.
All right, Unicorn Plus, I like the sound of that. And that's a first look into the business day this Tuesday, April 12, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.